If you've seen me play live recently or are just curious about taking your OP-1 on stage, here are 5 tips that I can give you that'll help you out a ton when playing live on stage with your OP-1. Did that rhyme just now? Tip number 1, set your tape to 100 BPM and keep it there. Just use the white encoder to speed the tape up or slow it down. For faster songs, speed up your tape and then record it in at that tempo. And then when you play it back, don't forget to turn that white encoder again, or to either slow your tape down or speed it up depending on the track. Step number 2 is work in tape loops. Now, these have to be consistent. If you're choosing 2 bars, make all of your things 2 bars. If you're working in 4 bars, make sure all your verses, choruses, and parts of your tracks are in those 4-bar loops. This is going to make it so that your tape loops can be switched between one another, and you can go from a verse to a chorus or a pre-chorus or whatnot very smoothly during your show. It's super simple. You just kind of switch from one to the other and it will loop that section for as long as you need it to loop. And speaking of tracks, tip number 3 is write down the minutes and the tape speed for each of your songs. Write it down on a napkin, or in my case, a guest check thing that I found at a restaurant one time. I write down the time that the tape is at during a particular tape loop, and then I either put -1, -3, -6, depending on what the tape is supposed to be set to match the BPM that I recorded that track in. Honestly, having this little menu like this is really going to help you choose the next track to then flow to after the one that you're playing now has ended. Tip number 4 is all about the 4 audio tracks on OP-1. Holding a track button down will actually solo that track, so use this to temporarily mute other tracks for things like verses and choruses and such. Actually, let me explain how I like to have my tracks organized. Track number 1 is going to be my main drums. This will be my kicks, my snares. Track number 2 will be for my more complex percussion, things like hi-hats, cymbals. It's nice to be able to control which of these elements you're bringing in. You don't always want the thump of your kick drum. That might get a little monotonous and just might thump too much. So you want to take that element out every now and then so that you can bring it back in. Track number 3 I usually just save for bass. And then track number 4 is going to have things like chords and melodies and counter melodies, things that I can bring in during big sections like the chorus, and then I can remove for smaller sections like the verses. And like I said, if you're singing, this will really help by taking out some elements like chords and melodies and such, so that you can sing over your bass and your drums without any of that stuff muddying up the mix.
Let the truth be told, I didn't ask for a heart of gold, but you never once spoke a lie.
And finally, tip number 5 is about volume and mixing. OP-1 does have a very nice mixing section. So in the track mixer, I like to set everything down to about 75 so that you have some wiggle room to bring things up or take things back down during your sound check, if you have one. This main mix section, however, lets you duck the entire audio level using the white encoder here and the shift button. You'll notice that the L and R volume here will decrease and increase together, so you don't mess up your stereo mix. I actually lower these down to about 50%. Then I use the gain and this sort of limiter function here to pump up and sort of compress and limit my track as it goes out into the main mix. I think OP-1's limiter is actually really powerful and it really helps keep the vibe of the track going, if you know what I mean. So those are my 5 tips. One more thing to really watch for. If you're trying to use this tape stop button, it's a really cool effect. It kind of helps make a drop before you kick in everything in the chorus or whatnot. Just be really careful not to hit button number 3, which is next to the tape stop button. And that button actually turns off your tape looping. So if you inadvertently hit that button, it'll just play through the rest of your music, regardless of tape speed or whatnot. You'll have to stop the show, reset your tape loops, and sort of start things up again. Just really be careful with that tape stop button. Use it sparingly. So those are my tips for playing a show with OP-1. I hope you found at least one of the tips in here to be very useful. Obviously, I really love the OP-1, and I really think it plays nicely as a live instrument. So let me know if you're playing a show with OP-1 down in the comments. I would love to hear about that in the future. Thank you so much for watching another one of my videos. I've got some more tutorials coming your way hopefully soon. Till then, I'll either see you on the podcast or I'll see you on my Instagram account. Best of luck if you have a gig coming up. We'll catch you in another video.